This play is based on how diseases start and the effective way to get them under control without any consternation or waiting for vaccines to become available. For you see, those things take years to work out, and with the possibility of never coming up with any vaccines at all. Social distancing, face masks, other protection, and restricted services cannot get disease under control the way people have thought about for years. All that does is make people work harder, cause confrontation, and start rebellion. People have been known to develop even more sickness with all of these things that happened during the pandemic. In this play, we're going to show you how to stop disease epidemics and pandemics by becoming familiar with deadly behavior problems and sick disability issues. In the characters we have are a customer, a restaurant desk person, a court person, a client, which is also a visitor, behavior specialist, a humane society agent, and a health department agent. And this play is directed by Von Heffler. In the first scene, we're going to talk about the limited service status. The restaurant seems to be the best to describe it as, which is what you'll see. In the second scene, we're going to visit the courthouse to get a court order to look down all these deadly behavior problems and sick disability issues. Then we're going to visit the Center for Behavioral Health with a specialist so that we can touch bases and exchange information about this situation. In the fourth scene, the Humane Society is going to visit the behavior specialist to discuss the top two deadly behavior problems. In the fifth scene, the health department visits the behavior specialist to discuss some sick disability issues that cause the spread of disease to work. You should be able to know that some disability issues are sick. Scene 6 is going to be a reprise of the Humane Society visiting the behavior specialist so that they can talk about what they're doing to stop snotty and lame people. In the seventh scene, the reprise of the health department visiting the behavior specialist and for the new medical and health policies to help stop diseases from spreading. That's so that we know what to do if it's a disability issue. And in the eighth and last scene, we've got a conclusion with the public services. So if you're ready, open up your minds and be prepared for scene 1 in the limited service status.
Now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, our services are limited, and so we're only open for a limited amount of customers and certain times of the day.
Believe it or deny it, I have this COVID-19 pandemic on good authority.
How's that?
This epidemic and every other epidemic are caused by deadly behavior problems and sick disability issues.
What makes you so sure of that?
I've seen how such issues have caused sickness through being unable to control themselves with mental challenges and all. Here's a list of them so that you can see.
This looks rather logical if you know what I mean, but in order to convince everybody about this, you have to get a court order to examine this with the federal health department. But I'll keep this paper you gave me on file.
Thank you. And so that pretty much describes the limits in service.
You said you wanted to come and talk to us about this unusual evidence behind the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's right. This is the list of the deadly behavior problems and sick disability issues that explain it all.
Let's see it.
After having looked at ways to get this through to people, I finally simplified it all down to a simple reference paper like this one.
This looks great. This evidence is incontrovertible. You've done an excellent job. Now you can go talk with some behavioral health personnel about this so that we can get the news spread worldwide.
Thank you. And after that, the client is going to go visit the behavioral health person.
Now, you were referred to me because you wanted to talk to me about what you learned related to the coronavirus, right?
That's right.
Looking at your reference page that you made pertaining to some deadly behavior problems, sick disability issues being responsible for COVID-19, I think I see some logical thinking behind this.
I thought you might.
Since I'm the president of the health department, mistakes are not in my job description.
Good.
I've studied these deadly behavior problems, sick disability issues for years, and I can see clearly how they spread disease the way they do. And I'm proud of you for realizing that too.
As far as I can see, this evidence is incontrovertible, and I think we'll need to take action upon it so that we can show everybody how to stop the spread of disease the right way.
I agree with you.
We're down to only two choices in this situation. Either there's something we can do about the virus where people are open to accepting papers on what you offer and agreeing with it and not repeating the health policy to people, or we can just simply say that COVID-19 is on the planet forever.
That sounds like a good way to put it, so that an impatient person will realize that it is possible to stop the spread of disease without waiting for medicine, or social distancing, or face masks, or limited service.
There's no point in saying that such a disease will ever end if you choose to defy this choice.
I agree with you.
I remember from this one book I read, Germs Make Me Sick by Marilyn Hafner, on the page where it discusses where diseases can't be cured, and so they gave you shots to protect yourself. I'm sure with this unusually new evidence, such an analogy no longer exists.
I suppose so.
I hope that this new presentation will prove true just like we thought it would.
Over the next couple of weeks and months, I'm going to question some people about these deadly behavior problems and sick disability issues that you listed here so that they can be proven true.
Thank you. And that's just what the specialist is bound to do. I've studied 3 deadly behavior problems that cause silent killers through the type 3 HIV, and 2 of them pertain to how disease gets started.
What exactly are they?
One of them is a person who's consistently snotty.
What have you learned about that?
Such a person frequently bumps into people for no reason and then double cusses at them when they say something about how mean that was.
That sounds rather rotten, if you know what I mean.
I've seen how such a person pushes people around and scares them even if they're not hurting them.
How insensitive.
I've even seen how they push children and people with disability down and leaving them totally helpless on the ground.
That's bad.
I've seen how they throw stuff on the floor and confuse people with not wanting something with accidentally dropping stuff.
That's especially dangerous if somebody gets hit by that object that they threw on the floor, if by chance somebody gets knocked unconscious.
I've heard about how in the public bathroom such a person acts like they need help and suddenly accuses the person of invading their personal space. Following that, the fight gets out of hand and one or both of them get hurt.
I can see why such behavior needs to be stopped.
I've heard about how such a person is always grumpy and never regrets it. People have tried to stop them in aggressive ways, only to require paying for their behavior.
I, for one, wouldn't leave a person to do that to anybody pretending that nobody's getting hurt and telling victims to ignore them and to mind their own business. That only makes the situation worse.
People say that you have to learn how to ignore them, and I think that's such a foolish thing to do. Besides, after ignoring was declared genetic in June 1994, the learn how to was dropped from ignoring. Nobody is responsible for any person not agreeing with that except for themselves, because they weren't listening when ignoring was declared genetic in June 1994.
I think so too.
One of them is a person who's very lame.
What have you learned about that?
Such a person never talks to people in a worthy manner and makes them look like such a fool.
That doesn't sound like healthy behavior to me. I don't think it's right to tell a victim of that to mind their own business, because that's just displaying the victim as the accomplice of the person with a lame attitude.
People say that reminding somebody that such yucky behavior has nothing to do with them, even through confusion and impatience, is really showing everybody about how such a victim belongs to a concentration camp.
I agree with you.
Some of them just turn away from people who are next to them without saying anything, and then the one who got turned away from makes some attempts to will them up only to cause confrontation.
That sounds like some risky behavior to me.
Some of them just give a person who's doing something great for people during their commute such lame responses like telling them about how they can just do their work at home. And then the one who took that response would say back to them, "Shame on you! I'll thank you never to tell me that again," only to involve even more people.
That sounds like something I would say to a person with a lame attitude too.
A lot of them pay no attention to their families and end up getting kicked out of the household.
That's what a lot of people do with such a lame person as far as I can see.
Both the lame and snotty behaviors also include refusing to get a job and a home and insisting on being homeless all the time. They consistently get into fights with people passing by them and causing injury.
That sounds like some rather dissipated behavior to me.
Not having a home seems to make them leave their body waste everywhere they go, and that's where disease starts. It also makes them improperly disposed of their waste chemicals, and that's the main cause of childhood cancer and people who were born with deformities.
I think you've got a point.
They're very easy to catch through the use of a shooter net, which is capable of trapping them. We do it by surprise so that they won't have the opportunity to escape and spread any more disease or injure any more people.
How do people call for you when they need you?
They use this new reporter wristband when we hear about somebody whose behavior is snotty or lame from them.
It sounds to me like you know what you're doing very well.
And that's just how it turned out with that visit, the Humane Society versus the specialist. And now, the next person visiting the specialist is the health department. They're coming in to try and help out with some diseases that happen, or sickening disabilities that people need to know. I've studied 13 invasive disability issues and 14 non communicable disability issues, and 10 of them cause disease to spread.
What exactly are they?
One of them is consistently ignoring your surroundings.
What makes you so sure that such a disability spreads disease?
A lot of times, such a person litters the world without realizing it, and through that, they improperly dispose of their waste, and it causes people to get sick from it.
I think I know what you're driving at. Such a person badly needs neurophysiology to fix a problem. If they're not eligible for neurophysiology, they'll be required by law to wear an Exelon device on their nape.
I know all about that. The same analogy rings true with a person who walks away from whoever they like for no reason.
I think I agree with you.
The same analogy rings true with a person who angrily litters the world without realizing it.
That's definitely true with all of the sickness that people like that spread. It leaves diseases waiting to get into people and making them sick.
I've even known people who brag others as they go by without introduction and never respect people who ask them to stop it.
That's pretty sick, all right.
Somebody like that, because they don't know any better, frequently brag about their favorite music. That's really not healthy for society and to everybody who goes by them.
The majority of the people who do that are disabled veterans and therefore don't have the perception to realize that.
It is possible for such a person to litter the world and to confront a person who's cleaning up after them.
That's very dangerous as well as unhealthy.
I've known about the kind of people who approach and embarrass people consistently too.
That's one thing I know that easily spreads sickness around because a lot of them don't even know what they're doing well enough.
I've seen how a person who's approached by such a person attempts to injure the one who sneaked up on them.
That's very unlawful, you know.
Similar to a person who approaches and embarrasses people is a person who butts into people's conversations with consistently saying irrelevant things.
That kind of behavior and disability issue is pretty disgusting, if you know what I mean.
I hear people saying to that kind of person, "Dude, your attitude stinks, and you got cooties." I really don't approve of such a response, though.
I guess I don't blame a person who's being approached by such a disgusting person saying that, even though it sounds rather rude.
I remember how somebody I knew once had a problem with a person of disability who was brain dead and kept on annoying people in the household with all his talking to people. Of course, because it's not in my job description to work with that kind of problem, there was nothing I could do about that.
How was your friend coping with such a thing in his former adult family home?
Not very well. He reminded him not to say the same things every day and not to talk about irrelevant things to us, but such a thing would never get through to him, and the masters of the house were making him be tolerant with him anyway.
It's not wise to place a person of disability who's brain dead with everybody else who isn't capable of handling it, because that can very easily lead to talking with hate. I guess your friend ended up not allowed any social time with everybody because he was too impatient with a person with a brain dead related disability.
It looks like so, even though it really should have been that person who was brain dead.
It's very inhumane to be placing a person who has an annoying disability issue away from everybody else, even if you're unable to tolerate them.
I've even known the kind of person with disability who consistently follows people around wherever they're going and hangs on to them all the time, too.
I can see how sickness gets spread through that too. I feel as though such a person is hard to get off your trail because of some malfunctioning in their brain.
One of the kinds of disabilities, even though it's not too dangerous or contagious, is a hitting disorder. All that does is make people feel uncomfortable in the area. That seems to be just another malfunction in the person's brain, too.
I agree, and yet it's something that badly requires repairs through neurophysiology, too. I can't picture any person feeling comfortable with another one's hitting disorder either.
And then there's this kind of disability issue which isn't just contagious but also dangerous. Attraction disorder to everything people do.
I think so, too.
As well as it spreads sickness everywhere, it's also dangerous in the event of a person working on something getting injured, or that person striking them back with an injurious move.
It's not acceptable to strike a person back with an injurious move, even if it's a person with an attraction disorder, because of the hospital bills you'll have to pay for with that person.
More employees at the behavior school that consist of people with attraction disorders keep them locked in a straitjacket and straight pants so that they won't be able to cause injury to anybody or cause them to do anything injurious back to them.
That's a very smart thing to do because failure to restrain a person with an attraction disorder means liability for the whole school and crime for the person who defended himself or herself from striking them back.
And then there's the sickest of all the disability issues that revolve around contact with people, consistently walking up to a person, observing them without saying hello.
I could never put up with a person with that kind of disability issue for sure.
Some people who are annoyed by them try to deter them away with red flags, only to not see them walk away. Some people place up their hands in a stopping gesture, only to see them take it like it's a dialing board.
That sounds like a person who doesn't have any perception on anything to me. I can easily agree with you on how such an issue is capable of spreading disease.
Some of them say to them, "Go away, you got cooties," or "Dude, your attitude stinks," or even hiss at them like a defensive cat, only to call some staff over to remind them that such responding is not acceptable.
That's why it's not acceptable to refuse to refer them to the neurophysiologist if they are eligible for that kind of repair.
Such a person is very limited in what they're capable of saying, too, which means that they're not capable of getting with the program when they're being spoken to.
I think I see why you believe in how invasive and non communicable and disease spreading such a disability is.
If you did something rude to them, it would be impossible to apologize to them without losing your patience and it becoming a lie too easily.
I agree with you on that for sure.
All of these sick disabilities not just spread disease around, but they also do damage to people's concentration abilities.
How so?
Every one of them walks up to you. You lose 1% of your ability to concentrate, and then every day of the year it only grows back 1/100th of a percent each day.
I guess that's why all of these sick disability issues need to be repaired and why the court system is ordering people to do it.
That's it. The biggest concentration need that gets affected by people with those sick disability issues is singing and learning about music concepts with a metronome because your ability has to be working at least at a 90% level. If it's too far diminished, you can't hold the tempo or the lyrics when singing at all.
I'm surprised that you know all about this.
And that's just how the health department handled the situation. And now the Humane Society agent is coming back to describe some new choices on how they're doing things.
I guess you're back to tell me how you handle people's snotty and lame attitudes now.
I sure am, and you'll be very proud of me, guaranteed.
What are you doing about it now?
Since people now use these new reporter wristbands that they wear on their hands, we've been getting hundreds of reports every day of the year about lame and snotty behaviors in people.
I guess that's more effective in stopping crime and disease than through doing it through 911 or Crime Check.
Oh, yes. More people feel safe out in the mainstream of society now, too, with this new procedure.
How has it been affecting those lame and snotty people?
Quite a lot, since the county jails now have electrocution rooms where they send a lame or snotty person to. The electrocution rooms are set up so that such a person will trip and fall over on a bed of electrical wires without seeing themselves do it. It has to be done that way because layman's snotty behavior consists of that person having the type 3 HIV in their bloodstream.
I'm surprised that you know all about that the way you do.
The type 2 HIV and the type 3 HIV cannot be cured through the sewage system, and that causes silent killers, and young female animals are the most vulnerable to those, and nobody knows why.
I think you're a very smart person to know all of that the way you do.
Some other behaviors we know that nobody can adapt to are known to have the type 2 HIV and have to be cured through a blood cleaning. This consists of draining out the HIV blood from somebody and then replacing it with some healthy blood, which is why blood donors are heavily required.
I'm proud of you for studying all of this so that we can get it all resolved like we've been planning for a long time.
When it comes to the electrical shocking, there is some survival in it, but not if they've been on drugs or alcohol because of the flammable fluids in them.
That makes sense as far as I can see.
Even though at least two-thirds of the lame and snotty people are dying through the electrical shocking, at least we've alleviated up to 95% of the homelessness, which alleviated up to 95% of the improper waste disposal, which alleviated 95% of the disease epidemics and pandemics in the world.
If it reaches 100, then it'll be the end of disease epidemics in the world forever, and it'll be an international revolution.
Congratulations, Humane Society. I think you got everything going. And now the health department is on their second visit to the specialist.
I guess you're back to tell me about the new health policy when it comes to people with disabilities pertaining to attraction and contact with people.
I sure am, and you'll be very proud of me, guaranteed.
What are you doing about it now?
I've discussed it as a group of people in a meeting at the federal health department, and through the federal government, we decided to make it the law for referring a person with any of these 10 disability issues to the neurophysiologist for some repairs. It is possible to get disability issues repaired through neurophysiology now.
That sounds like an important kind of law to me.
It's very effective for neurophysiology technicians to program abilities into people through a computer nowadays, and now they've made it possible to fix disability issues like these 10.
That sounds like some good news to me.
Spokane, Washington seems to have a lot of people with disabilities that are invasive due to consistently destroying things and consistent contacting with people. Money consistently goes into replacing things, which is bad for the world's wealth. That's why it's hard to get a job in Spokane and why the building of their North and South Freeway Interstate 9 keeps getting put off year after year after year.
I guess that proves how such a disability issue will require repair through neurophysiology and brain replacement.
Nobody in Spokane is ever willing to go to Seattle or Portland or Boise to get any neurophysiological repairs or brain replacements because they think it's too far to reach. Last June, there were enough graduates in the neurophysiology and brain surgery field, and now they're working and living in Spokane, Washington. The hospitals there now consist of both of those services, and the city personnel are now enforcing those repair requirements wherever such disability issues are present.
That sounds like some good progress to me. Saying you're too poor or too far away to make those certain repairs is never trustworthy, if you know what I mean.
People who can't afford the trip to neurophysiology or brain replacement services get bailed out through AAA doing so, and people who can't pay for either operation get bailed through the federal government. Failure to accept those bailing offers means that you won't have a home to live in.
That sounds like the way to get those repairs underway.
And now the health department has got some credit for what they've done. And now they're all going back to the restaurant to give them the final truth.
This new procedure you gave me the other day for helping disease is to get stopped as we heard it on the news through the paper, and the internet explains what causes disease and what you need to stop it. Because of you, we now don't need all of this social distancing or facial protection or limited businesses anymore.
I guess we were right all along.
You were, but federal law now enforces every one of us to be alert for these behavior problems and disability issues and to report them for the immediate repairs. We will do it. And now, here's a recap on what we talked about so that you can see what we're driving at. Right here is a list of the different snotty behavior problems.
This right here is a list of the different lame behavior problems. This is what both lame and snotty people do to people in society. This is the procedure that we follow to catch people with lame and snotty attitudes. This is the new sign to help catch people with lame and snotty attitudes, because it also catches people who litter and pollute and endanger people. This is a list of non-communicable disability issues that are similar to a person who's either lame or snotty. This is a list of attraction-related disability issues that are similar to a person who's snotty. And finally, this is the recap on the wrong way to handle behavior and disability issues. And now you know what to do to help stop disease from happening. For future reference, you'll have to try it, and I hope to hear some better news then.